1584 for a book, specifically Manuscript Codex 109, there's a picture of a cat, not a regular cat, but a cat with a rocket strapped to its back. It also shows a bird with a rocket heading toward a castle. The book covers a lot of the early history of gunpowder, artillery, and explosives, so the picture is not that weird. In a similar book with comparable images of these explosive animals, the picture comes with instructions for setting a castle or city on fire, places that would otherwise be hard to attack. The instructions start by getting a cat from the place you want to attack. Then you tie a little sack to its back, light it on fire, and let the cat go. The idea is that it will run to the nearest castle or town, and when it hides somewhere it thinks is safe, like a barn, a pile of hay, or straw, it will ignite. There's no way to know if this method was ever actually used. Still, cats and birds set on fire show up in many historical texts from around the world. The Finnish scholar Pentti Aalto even cites example of explosive cats and birds in the 3rd century BC Sanskrit text, the Russian Chronicle, and the early modern history of Genghis Khan. This is not the first time people used cats in warfare. In the 16th century, a German officer planned to attach jars of poison to cats. The cats would then be panicked toward the enemy lines. Of course, that was nothing more than just a plan. A real story that is less cruel happened during World War I, when the British Army recruited 500,000 cats as poison gas detectors in the trenches. The main reason, though, was to fight disease-carrying rats. If a cat got agitated and started coughing, it was a sign for soldiers to put on their gas masks. Cats were also used to carry messages. For example, Mirka, the courier cat, was known to deliver messages to Soviet troops during the Battle of Stalingrad in 1942. In an even naughtier attempt, cats were used for non-military purposes, like sneaking saws and cell phones into Brazilian prisons. And who could forget the CIA spy cats, codenamed Acoustic Kitty? These cats were implanted with wires and microphones to eavesdrop on the Soviets during the Cold War. The project didn't last long though, because one of the cats got hit by a car. The attempts to strap an explosive device to a cat are unnecessarily cruel, as they completely ignore the value of a cat's life. However, there are many instances where cats have been used in far less cruel ways. Cats were used extensively on ships for rodent control, because without them, barrels and sacks would be riddled with holes. Diseases would spread easily, and those precious little wires and ropes, often serving as lifelines, would be chewed through by rats. Other than acting as guardian angels against rats, cats also served as mascots and companions, providing stress relief and a bit of fun in otherwise tense situations. Some of these cats were not deliberately recruited, but were the result of rescue, since many had been abandoned or orphaned in war zones and were adopted by soldiers or sailors who found them. Using cats as weapons is heartless, and it is no less cruel than using other animals. However, cats are used far less often because of their independent nature. The main requirement of a weapon is control, and cats are famously difficult to control. They're born with their own agenda and an almost natural talent for mischief. Because of that, they are spared from many exploitative and evil schemes devised by humans. Other animals, not so much. Dogs and horses, for instance, are far more controllable and, unfortunately, make very compliant tools, sometimes even appearing enthusiastic in helping their fellow humans. For that reason, they have been among the most commonly used animals in warfare. Other animals, such as elephants, pigeons, and dolphins, have also been used during wartime, and naturally, their different traits serve different functions. Horses, for example, are the most widely used animals in the history of warfare. Some were even trained to bite and kick. When used strategically, such as mounting warriors armed with bows, they could turn a group into a force to be reckoned with, as seen with the steppe peoples, who formed some of the most powerful armies in Asian history. Fortunately, the use of horses declined with the rise of modernity. Elephants are also widely used, even though they're not considered truly domesticable. Still, they can be trained to move heavy loads or serve as mounts. They were used as early as 1100 BC, as mentioned in the Sanskrit hymns. They also appeared in conflicts such as the Second Punic War and much more recently, the Second World War, where they were used by both Japanese and Allied forces. Because they can perform work in places where vehicles cannot operate, they have long been seen as valuable. Camels were also used during both world wars because they were better suited for travel through sandy deserts than horses and required far less water. In World War II, camels were even used during the Battle of Stalingrad to transport ammunition, fuel for tanks and aircraft, food, water for field kitchens, and even wounded Red Army soldiers. Freer animals like pigeons have also been used for photographic espionage. They were employed during battles such as Verdun and Somme in World War I. Though they were not particularly successful, pigeons were even tested for guiding missiles in a program known as Project Pigeon. Bats, interestingly enough, were also used to carry small incendiary bombs. Even non-conventional animals like rats and pigs have been used for military purposes. Rats, for example, were used to detect mines. Their small weight prevented them from triggering explosions, and their strong sense of smell made them especially useful. Chickens were also used during the Gulf War to detect poisonous gases in an operation called Kuwaiti Field Chicken, or KFC for short. Yes, I know. However, the project failed massively, as many of the chickens died within a week. These chickens were under extreme stress, forced to live in harsh desert environments while also struggling to survive diseases. In the end, the chickens didn't make it, and it had nothing to do with poisonous gases. Just like the chickens, many of these exploitations of animals ended with them being unable to serve their purpose, and their deaths were ultimately in vain. But the military is not the only place animals are used. They are exploited in almost every industry. These branching networks of exploitation are what some activists now call the Animal Industrial Complex, or AIC, where animals are systematically and institutionally exploited. AIC includes virtually every economic activity involving animals: the food industry, animal testing, medicine, clothing, labor and transport, tourism and entertainment, selective breeding, and many more. At this scale, animals are devalued at a cultural level, and acts of violence against them are permitted. It's a product of far-reaching speciesist socialization. You can see it in our schools, which largely indoctrinate young people into the devalued status of animals. Animals appear as caged pets, as subjects for dissection and vivisection, and of course, as lunch. On television and in movies, animals are invisible, and even when they appear, they're marginalized, vilified, or objectified. According to activists, the ideology of speciesism is so profound that anyone who raises moral objections against animal oppression is dismissed or ridiculed. According to Piers Byrne, speciesism is the crux of all the networks of the animal industrial complex. Amy Fitzgerald and Nick Taylor also see speciesism as a form of discrimination, similar to racism or sexism, and this system is pervasive under capitalist and neoliberal regimes. It makes humans believe they have the right over non-human animals. These beliefs lead to millions of animal deaths each year, and some argue that proponents of the AIC actively lobby against animal rights activism. Ironically, humans continue these practices even when they cause serious harm to themselves. For example, mad-cow disease from beef consumption and the COVID-19 pandemic can both be traced back to the AIC. Luckily, some positive changes are happening. People are starting to treat animals better. There are more options for plant-based food, and in many countries, animal welfare laws are becoming stricter. Even though this industrial network of exploitation is huge, I personally think it can change in the future, but it will be very slow. Since the dawn of mankind, animals have been used extensively by humans, who have positioned themselves as the masters of all animals and the ultimate manipulators of the environment, living and non-living. While some animals are used without obvious harm, such as for pets, companionship, or welfare, the negative uses disproportionately outweigh the good, and the huge disregard for animal lives is disgusting. The reason we need these animals in the first place is that we are constantly fighting each other and seeking to feel superior. Without war, there would be no need for animals to do the heavy lifting for humans, no need for them to comfort deeply traumatized soldiers, and no need for them to die for this senseless human activity. Why can't we simply get along? As self-proclaimed masters of all creatures on Earth, this vile exploitation of animals should end, and to the best of our power, unnecessary suffering should be reduced. Hopefully, that will steer us toward a better world. Hey guys, thanks for watching. That little bit about KFC is a little funny, right? I hope you enjoyed all that. If you like what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon, where you can get early access and bonus content. And if you like, you can share this video with a friend or anyone who might like it. It really helps me out. So have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.